You voted in record numbers in November. Your voices were heard. Your votes were counted. The will of the people prevailed. We won 3 times here. Each recount, you know what I mean? I think we should count it as 3 states. Won 3 times. I've said it before. Getting America vaccinated will be one of the most difficult operational challenges this nation has ever faced. But we've known it for the last months. This administration has gotten off to a god-awful start. The president spends more time whining and complaining than doing something about the problem. I don't know why he still wants the job. He doesn't want to do the work. Look, the states need help. Georgia, there's no one in America with more power to make that happen than you, the citizens of Atlanta, the citizens of Georgia. And that's not an exaggeration. That is that's literally true. If you send John and the Reverend to Washington, those $2,000 checks will go out the door, restoring hope and decency and honor for so many people who are struggling right now. And if you send Senators Perdue and Loeffler back to Washington, those checks will never get there. It's just that simple. The power is literally in your hands. By electing John and the Reverend, you can break the gridlock that has gripped Washington and this nation. With their votes in the Senate, we'll be able to make the progress we need to make on jobs, on health care, on justice, on the environment, on so many important things. By electing John and the Reverend, you'll be voting to get the states the resources they need to get the vaccines distributed. When you vote for John and Raphael, you'll be sending 2 senators who will fight for you, who put Georgia first, who put you first. You don't have that now. You have 2 senators who think it's more important to reward wealth than hard work in the tax system. You have 2 senators now who think they don't work for you, they work for Trump.
You gotta imagine that at some point, Trump has to realize that continuing to try and pull these desperate election theft antics is only making him look more pathetic than if he just accepted the results from the start. Because now you have Joe Biden quite literally laughing at him in front of crowds of people for his insistence on losing elections 3 times over. So I guess it turns out that Trump did get tired of winning. Biden even calls Trump out for doing what he's done relentlessly over the last 4 years, and that is whining and complaining. The irony being that Trump's whole persona that he's tried to cultivate for himself is that he's some type of a strong man, and yet I've seen 7-year-olds that complain less than him. His entire Twitter feed reads like every customer service email to Spirit Airlines, and this is the GOP's tough guy? The fact is that Trump's complaints are nothing new. Just with regard to this quote-unquote rigged election, remember that Trump's cried foul in every election that he's ever been in. Before even securing the Republican nomination in 2016, he claimed the Iowa caucus was rigged and attacked Ted Cruz, tweeting, "Based on the fraud committed by Senator Ted Cruz during the Iowa caucus, either a new election should take place or Cruz results nullified." Prior to the 2016 general election, he tweeted, "The election is absolutely being rigged by the dishonest and distorted media pushing crooked Hillary, but also at many polling places. Sad." Even after he won the election, he still claimed it was rigged, tweeting, "In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally." And that was for an election he won. So let's not pretend that this is anything other than Trump's inability to accept the fact that he's a loser. And now he continues to cry fraud, even though his campaign and its allies are 1 for 61 in the courts, where they failed to prove even a single instance of fraud. The DOJ has said there's no fraud, the DHS has said there's no fraud, Republican governors and secretaries of state have said there's no fraud, the vast majority of Americans know there's no fraud. All this is a disinformation campaign. It is Donald Trump knowingly and willfully lying to his supporters because he's too petty and small to admit that he lost. And so instead, he'd rather burn down the whole system because democracy be damned so long as he can protect himself. And while we're on the subject of Republicans hurting Americans, Biden goes on to slam Perdue and Loeffler, the Republican senators from Georgia, for blocking relief during this pandemic that the Republican Party itself exacerbated in its desperation to kowtow to Trump. I mean, think about that. Not only did Republicans allow this virus to explode throughout the country in deference to Trump's insistence that it was no big deal, but now they're the ones standing in the way of relief to Americans who are suffering as a result. And so the message here is as clear and simple as it gets. If Georgians elect Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, the first order of business will be $2,000 checks. Checks that are so desperately needed as people struggle to pay their rent and put food on the table and keep the heat on. And that's to say nothing of what else we'll get. Namely, a $15 minimum wage, federally decriminalized marijuana, expanding healthcare, voting rights protections, women's reproductive rights protections, and bold climate change action. All of it is imminently possible if Georgians show up and vote. So the choice is clear. We'll either reward a party that is fundamentally opposed to democracy and that spent our tax dollars waging disinformation campaigns aimed at destroying the foundations of this country, or we can elect two Democrats who will ensure that the duly elected president can enact his agenda and actually offer some relief to the people of this country who so desperately need it. So we owe it to ourselves to vote. While you're here, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I take a deep dive into the top stories of the week, and I also interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Pete Buttigieg, Katie Porter, Al Franken, Cory Booker, Jamie Harrison, Mary Trump, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.